We have a lot of musicians in coming here, a lot of rock stars, a lot of sports athletes, but this is refreshing. Another reason to like Randy Couture. You show up, no entourage, it's just you. All right, let's do the interview. It's just you that shows up.
Yeah, what do I need an entourage for? Yeah, we try to keep it simple. I don't get too carried away with any of it, and certainly can't take yourself too seriously.
Have you lost your mind, though? You're riding a motorcycle? What happens if you wipe out?
That's how I relax. I've done that since I was a kid. I had a dirt bike and used to go tear around the dirt track across the street in the schoolyard, and that's just kind of how I unwind. So it's nice to get up and go ride across town.
Was there ever anything in your contract that said no riding? Remember, you could be Ben Roethlisberger. You could be out.
Yeah, no, and I think you, especially in Vegas, I mean, you got to be very defensive. People run red lights here like crazy, and you just got to expect that in every car that you see in front of you, that they're going to pull in front of you, they're going to run their light. And I think if you keep that in mind, you'll be fine.
We'll get to your great benefit coming up tomorrow in a second, but what have you been up to in the last few months, and do you still train all the time?
Training all the time. We've got several guys, obviously, that fight in the UFC and everywhere else in the gym. You know, Vanderlei Silva's getting ready for his fight. I'll be cornering him in a week and a half at the UFC. Forrest Griffin's getting ready for his title fight with Rampage Jackson here this summer, so I've been working out with him quite a bit. Mike Pyle's over in Japan right now fighting for the new Victory Road over there, helping him getting ready. He left on Tuesday for that fight. Gray Maynard, Tyson Griffin, both, you know, fighting for the UFC, just coming off of fights, and we'll be ramping back up to get them ready for fights. So it's never a dull moment over at Extreme Couture.
Can you update us on your current situation, that playing out in the courts, that you think once your contract runs out, that's it? But the UFC says you have to fight 2 more times to get out of the contract?
Right, well, that's kind of the rub. You know, and in our estimation, the language of the contract says it's one or the other, and they think it's, you know, if the fights don't occur, then they can extend the contract. And so we Mark Cuban stepped up as a third party because he's interested, like everybody else, in the Fedor fight, filed to get a declaration from the state of Nevada on the language of the contract and what's what. And all that's been filed. Now we're just kind of all sitting, waiting to see, you know, what the courts are going to say. And that should be here in the next couple of weeks. So we're, you know, obviously anxiously awaiting a word and what it's going to be. That'll tell the tale.
And you feel you have nothing else to prove. You just want to take on Fedor, one of the best in the world, and they get that fight, want to make that fight happen.
Yeah, that's the fight that makes sense to me at this stage of my career. I'll be 45 June 22nd. You know, I realize that there's light at the end of the tunnel for me competitively, so you want to fight the best guys. It's not a, you know, and so that's why I've pursued this Fedor fight so hard, and it's unfortunate that it couldn't happen in the UFC, you know, for whatever reason. And, you know, there are a lot of mitigating circumstances, and now there's, you know, kind of hard feelings since I walked away, and Dana said a lot of things, and, you know, that's just Dana. That's how Dana is. He's emotional, and I think some of the emotions have settled down now. I saw him at the last event. I don't have any hard feelings. I understand. It's business. I don't begrudge their position. And, you know, it was never my intention to make such a big deal out of this, and I was kind of shocked that the mainstream media and everybody else grabbed a hold of it and has made such a big deal out of it.
Well, Tim Sylvia beat you to the punch, and he's taken on Fedor. Now, what happened? He can screw things up here. What if
I mean, isn't that kind of the way things work out? I mean, you know, I don't worry about that too much. I think, you know, Tim's obviously a very formidable, seasoned veteran, and Fedor, you know, he wants to fight, and that's been the commentary on him for the last year and a half or so is, oh, he isn't fighting any top 10 guys. Well, he's got a top 10 guy now. Tim's a tough cat. And so I'll be intently watching that fight, having just fought Tim this last year, and see how that comes out, see how Fedor deals with the issues and the problems that a guy like Tim Sylvia poses in the ring.
You have Affliction, you have WEC, you have Elite XC, HDNet. Do you think these other organizations can spend the money and take some of the big names from the UFC, and they can start and build their own thing and get a big following?
Well, I don't know about if it's taken people from the UFC. I think the issues are a little simpler than that. Yeah, there is. It's a competitive landscape for mixed martial arts now. Everybody thinks they can make money at this. You know, obviously the Affliction card coming up has a lot of top fighters on it. They've signed a lot of the best free agents out there, the guys that aren't tied up with any of the other promotions or the UFC. Predominantly, they're the ones who have real exclusive contracts. I think just there's some things that need to change in our sport. I think, you know, there isn't a fighter out there that has health insurance. I mean, that's ridiculous. forget about retirement pension or something like that. Fighting's not going to last forever. I'm at the end of the game here. I don't have a pension. I'm on my own. Those are things that need to change in our sport. I think there needs to be an independent rankings system. That's not, the UFC says it has the best fighters. Elite XC has Kimbo Slice. They think he's the best heavyweight in the world. There's no way, unless they want to loosen up the exclusivity, somebody on the outside ranks these fighters and say, okay, these are the top-ranked guys, and then we find a way to make those top fights happen. Me and Fedor is a perfect example of that. Who's the number 1 or number 2 heavyweight in the world right now? There's no way to know unless we find a way to make those fights happen. We're at a crossroads in our sport where we're going to head down the road that boxing's been on with this fragmentation and all these belts, and nobody can make heads or tails of who is the best heavyweight boxer in the world right now. Name the guys. I can't name the guys.
Yeah, it's bad.
And it undermines the credibility that we've worked so hard for in our sport. And I think these are huge issues. The fighters need to get together. We need to be treated like every other professional sport and professional athlete out there, except for boxers, because boxers don't have a lot of those same things because they become so fragmented and it's hard to organize them. And I don't think we want to fall into a lot of those pitfalls that boxing has had to try and survive. And, it's a little disconcerting as a top fighter in my weight class and I hate to bring up numbers, but the kind of pay that I'm receiving, and then I look at a guy like Floyd Mayweather, who's a top guy in his weight class that made 40 times that. There's a problem with that equation.
What if you give your bonus back? Will they let you out of the contract?
I think we're way past the negotiation. I would have retired initially when this whole thing went down, and I walked away. I said, you know what? I'm not trying to make waves. I'll retire. Just let me out of the contracts. My employment contract has a non-compete that doesn't end till October. I wanted out of that so I could at least go back to work promoting fights or commentating or doing the other stuff in the sport that I do. And they started playing around with that, and that wasn't going to happen. So it didn't make sense for me to, again, the one fight I really want is the Fedor fight. So, and I'm willing to step up and fight for that if I have to. So.